At a restaurant, my sister said, "Eden, find another table. This is for family, not adopted girls." They laughed. The waiter dropped a $2,030 bill on me. I paid, then heard, "Just a moment, please." My name is Melissa Carter. I am 32 years old, and I never expected my sister Ashley to publicly disown me during our parents' anniversary celebration. For 15 years, I believed I had finally found my real family after being shuffled around foster homes. That night at Montgomery's, the restaurant where we celebrated countless milestones, I learned that blood ties are stronger than adoption papers. What was supposed to be a joyful reunion turned into a night that redefined the concept of family for me. Before I share what happened, tell me where you're watching from and click subscribe to join me on my journey. That morning, on my parents' anniversary, I stood in my apartment in downtown Denver, looking at my reflection in the full-length mirror. At 32, I had built a life I was proud of as a senior financial advisor at Stevenson & Mitchell. I had just been promoted to partner with an office overlooking the harbor and a significant raise. Success had come to me after years of hard work, determination, and stability, which the Carters had given me when they took me into their home. I smoothed the dark blue dress I had chosen for today's celebration, remembering the day Robert and Carol Carter signed the adoption papers. I was 17, already leaving the system after wandering between 11 foster families since the age of 6. Most people don't want teenagers, especially ones like me, with a history of withdrawn behavior and trust issues. But the Carters were different. "You're a Carter now, Melissa," Robert said, his hand resting firmly on my shoulder. "This isn't temporary, it's forever." Carol cried with happiness, hugging me tightly. "We may have found you later than we hoped, but you're exactly where you're supposed to be." Their biological daughter, Ashley, was 2 years younger than me at the time. She was 15. I remember how her initial shyness turned into excited chatter about having a sister. "We can share clothes and do each other's makeup," she exclaimed, showing me her collection of teen magazines and introducing me to her friends as my sister, Melissa. For the first time since my biological mother abandoned me, I felt safe and needed. The Carters gave me stability during those critical years when I was finishing high school and entering college. They attended my graduation, threw birthday parties, and included me in every family portrait and Christmas card. For 15 years, I truly believed I had found my forever home. Robert and Carol celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary today. The pandemic separated our large family for almost 2 years, which made today's gathering at Montgomery's, an upscale restaurant in the city center, even more special. Everyone will be there. Aunt Dorothy and Uncle James on Robert's side, Aunt Lindsay and her husband on Carol's side, and all of our cousins, 15 people in total. As a surprise, I arranged to pay for dinner for everyone. The reservation was in my name, and I spoke to the restaurant manager to make sure that the bill would be brought directly to me at the end of the evening. It was my way of thanking the family that had given me so much. I checked the time and carefully wrapped the gift, a custom-made photo album documenting my parents' 35 years together, including the 15 that I was lucky enough to share with them. I had spent weeks collecting photos from relatives, scanning old pictures, and writing personal messages next to each memory. My phone buzzed with a message from my cousin Michelle. "Can't wait to see you tonight. It's been so long." I smiled as I replied, "See you soon. I've missed you all so much." In the taxi on the way to Montgomery, I scrolled through family photos on my phone. Here's last Christmas before the pandemic, all of us in matching sweaters by the fireplace. Here's a summer trip to Florida 3 years ago, where Robert taught me how to sail. My college graduation with Carol, who cried with pride. These memories kept me going during the isolation of lockdown and the pressure of my demanding job. My colleagues at Stevenson & Mitchell noticed my excitement about the family gathering all week. "You're practically glowing," my assistant Jessica commented that day. "This dinner must be very important to you." "They mean everything to me," I replied simply. Having lost my biological mother to addiction and never knowing my father, the stability and love the Carters provided changed my life. Without them, I wouldn't have had the confidence to succeed in school, pursue a career, or develop healthy relationships. Everything good in my life could be traced back to the day I became Melissa Carter. I arrived at Montgomery's 30 minutes early, wanting to make sure everything was perfect. The restaurant was as elegant as I remembered, with crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths. I asked for their best table, a round one in a semi-private gazebo overlooking the Denver skyline at sunset. "Miss Carter, everything is arranged as you requested," the hostess assured me as she led me to the table. "Champagne will be served after the main course, and we have noted that you will be discreetly paying the bill at the end of the evening." I thanked her, placing my parents' gift on the side table and placing small gift bags at each place setting, special key chains with the family crest for everyone. My heart was filled with anticipation as I imagined the joy on my parents' faces when they saw the whole family gathered together after such a long time. Tonight would be perfect. My parents texted that they were running late. An accident on the highway had stuck them in traffic. "Start without us," my father wrote. "We should be there in about 45 minutes. When the first family members began to arrive, I stood at the entrance to greet them. Aunt Dorothy and Uncle James were the first to arrive, followed by my cousins Emily and Brandon. They seemed genuinely happy to see me, although Aunt Dorothy immediately asked, "Ashley's not here yet?" as she scanned the restaurant. "Not yet, but she should be here soon," I replied, trying not to feel bad about not being a very good welcoming committee myself. When Ashley arrived with her husband Trent, her greeting was noticeably cold, a quick hug, barely touching, and then she walked past me to enthusiastically hug Aunt Dorothy. "Oh my gosh, I've missed you so much," she exclaimed, as if they hadn't talked on video chat just last week, a call I wasn't invited to join. "Let's take some pictures before Mom and Dad get here," Ashley suggested, pulling out her phone. She arranged the family members in front of the restaurant's elegant fireplace, directing where everyone should stand. When I moved to join the group, she said, "Oh, Melissa, could you take the photo? You have the longest arms." I agreed, taking a few shots before suggesting, "Now let me get in the picture too." "Actually, let's take a photo of just the cousins first," Ashley redirected, taking the phone from me. Somehow, as we tried different combinations of people, I only managed to get into 2 photos, both times awkwardly positioned on the edge, where I could easily be cropped out later. When we sat down at the table, Aunt Dorothy turned her attention to me. "So, Melissa, have you ever tried to find your biological family? I watched a documentary about adoptees reuniting with their biological parents. Fascinating stuff." I tensed up a little but kept smiling. "I haven't, no. The Carters are my family. But aren't you curious about your medical history, your heritage, your true roots?" she insisted. Before I could answer, Ashley interjected. "Speaking of family heritage, Dad has finally agreed to discuss what will happen to Grandma Carter's jewelry collection. You know how important it is for these things to stay with blood relatives who can pass them down through the generations." I felt a slight sting from her words, but told myself she probably didn't mean any harm. Still, I couldn't help but notice how the conversation changed every time I tried to participate. When I recalled a childhood memory of a family vacation in Colorado Springs, Ashley quickly corrected me. "That was the summer before you came, Melissa. You're thinking of a different trip." But that wasn't true. I had photos to prove it. But instead of arguing with her in front of everyone, I just nodded and fell silent. Across the table, I noticed Ashley whispering something to our cousin Michelle, who then looked at me with a sympathetic expression before quickly looking away. What had Ashley told her? The anxiety I was trying to dismiss grew stronger. When I tried to help with the seating arrangements as more relatives arrived, suggesting that we leave the seats closer to the head of the table for our parents, Ashley rejected my suggestion. "I've already thought it through. Mom specifically asked me to take care of it," she said, even though I knew for a fact that I had coordinated most of the anniversary plans with our mother. When my aunts and uncles asked about our parents' arrival time, I noticed that they directed their questions to Ashley rather than me, even though I was the one who had been corresponding with them. It was as if I had been silently demoted from daughter to distant acquaintance in their eyes. Then I heard Uncle James comment to Aunt Lindsay, "Ashley looks so much like Carol, doesn't she? Those Carter genes really show." A casual observation, perhaps, but the way they both looked at me after that made it seem deliberate. I took a sip of water, trying to calm the growing knot in my stomach. I was being overly sensitive, of course. This evening was about celebrating my parents, not me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When Ashley took out the name cards and placed them at the far end of the table, I saw my name written in her flowery handwriting. She had seated me as far away from our parents as possible, placing herself right between them. "I thought we weren't doing place cards," I said quietly. "Oh, I just made a few to make sure all the important people had the right seats," Ashley replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. While we waited for our parents, Ashley took out a family photo album that I had never seen before. "Look what I put together for Mom and Dad," she announced proudly, passing it around the table. I leaned over to look as it made its way around the table, immediately noticing that many of the family events were events I had been present for. But I wasn't in the album version. There was our trip to the Grand Canyon 3 summers ago, a photo I specifically remembered because a kind stranger had taken it for all 4 of us. But in Ashley's album, the photo only showed her with her parents. My heart sank when I realized it wasn't an accident. Ashley had systematically chosen photos that excluded me, or worse, she had edited me out. The narrative she was creating erased 15 years of my life with the Carters, and judging by the enthusiastic comments from our relatives, no one else found it strange or disturbing. When I excused myself to use the restroom, I leaned against the sink for a moment, breathing deeply. The evening had barely begun, and I was already holding back tears. All my careful preparations, coordinating with the restaurant, arranging to pay the bill, choosing thoughtful gifts, suddenly seemed naive. There was an undercurrent I hadn't anticipated, and I felt hopelessly unprepared to navigate it. "Pull yourself together," I whispered to my reflection. "This is about Mom and Dad, not you or Ashley." But as I returned to the table, I couldn't help but wonder if the family I had considered my own for 15 years had been an illusion all along. The elegant restaurant doors opened, revealing my parents who had finally arrived, Robert looking dapper in his custom-made suit, and Carol glowing in the deep burgundy dress I had helped her pick out last month. I stood up, moving toward them with open arms, but Ashley somehow got to them first, hugging them both tightly. "Mom, Dad, happy anniversary!" she exclaimed loudly, attracting the attention of nearby diners. When it was finally my turn to greet them, their hugs seemed shorter, more distracted. My father patted me distractedly on the shoulder, scanning the table to see who else had arrived. My mother's usual warm hug was replaced by a quick kiss on the cheek as her eyes followed Ashley. "Melissa, you look beautiful," she said before turning back to admire Ashley's dress in detail. "Oh dear, you're wearing the earrings Grandma Carter gave you. They look wonderful with that neckline." We returned to the table, where I discovered that Ashley had rearranged the seating again, somehow placing herself and Trent directly next to our parents. I found myself sandwiched between Uncle James and my cousin's new boyfriend, whom I had never met before. When the appetizers were served, Ashley dominated the conversation. "Remember when we went to New York for Mom and Dad's 25th anniversary? Those family trips were so special, just the 3 of us exploring Manhattan together." I frowned slightly. It was their 27th anniversary, and I was there too. I have pictures of all 4 of us at the Statue of Liberty. An awkward silence fell over the table until Ashley laughed lightly. "Oh, Melissa, you're thinking of our trip to Chicago that same year. It's easy to get confused." But it wasn't a mistake. I clearly remembered learning how to say hot dog with everything, and my father taking pictures of me and my mother in Central Park. but several relatives nodded along with Ashley as if my memories were fabricated. When it was time to give gifts, I reached for the photo album I had so carefully created. "Mom, Dad, I wanted to give you something that encompasses 35 amazing years." "Actually," Ashley interrupted, standing up dramatically, "Trent and I have something special to share first." She presented an exquisite crystal vase that immediately caught everyone's attention. "It's handmade Venetian glass from the same artist who made the piece Grandma Carter left to Mom," she explained. "I wanted you to have a matching set that represents our family heritage." My carefully crafted photo album remained forgotten beside me. "And that's not all," Ashley continued. "I've been working on something even more meaningful." She took out an elegantly bound book. "I traced our family genealogy back 7 generations. I discovered that we are direct descendants of one of Denver's founding families. Our blood is deeply rooted in the history of this city." "Blood is deeply rooted," echoed in my ears as my relatives enthusiastically passed around the genealogy book, exclaiming about shared physical traits and historical connections that, by definition, completely excluded me. A memory surfaced from years ago, shortly after my adoption. Ashley, then 16, snapped at me during a minor argument. "You're not a real Carter anyway." She apologized immediately, and I chalked it up to normal teenage rivalry between sisters. Now I wondered if that moment had revealed her true feelings all along. During dinner, I noticed that Ashley kept exchanging meaningful glances with various family members. Had she spoken to them privately before tonight, setting the stage for what was about to happen? My suspicions grew when Trent, Ashley's husband of 3 years, made what he clearly thought was a humorous observation. "You know what they say, you can choose your friends, but you're stuck with your family. Well, unless you're the one being chosen, right, Melissa?" He smiled, scanning the table expectantly. Several relatives laughed awkwardly while others avoided my gaze. The implication was clear. I wasn't automatically stuck with them. I was conditional. Temporary. Carter by paper, not by right. When I finally found a moment to mention my recent promotion at work, Ashley immediately interrupted. "Speaking of work, did I tell everyone that Trent is being considered for the position of chief resident surgeon? The youngest doctor ever to be considered for this position at Denver General Hospital." Once again, my news went unnoticed as the family congratulated Trent. I leaned back in my chair, the excitement I had felt about sharing my achievement now deflated. During the main course, my cousin Michelle leaned over when the others were distracted. "Hey, I wanted to check if you were okay financially," she whispered. "What? Yes, of course. Why do you ask?" She looked confused. Ashley mentioned that you're struggling with the pandemic. She said you might need to borrow money, but you're too proud to ask. So she suggested we all be sensitive about financial topics tonight." I was stunned into silence. Nothing could be further from the truth. My firm had thrived during the market volatility of the pandemic, and my recent promotion came with a substantial bonus. Why was Ashley spreading such misinformation? Before I had time to process this revelation, Aunt Dorothy commented loudly, "Carol, Ashley looks just like you did at her age. I was looking at some old photos recently, and the resemblance is striking. Those Carter eyes and smile. It's amazing how traits are passed down." Carol beamed with pride, while Ashley basked in the comparison. No one seemed to notice or care about the implicit exclusion in such observations. "Family loyalty is so important these days," Ashley said, her eyes drifting meaningfully toward me. "Knowing who you can really count on when the going gets tough." As I reached for my water glass, Trent gestured widely, accidentally spilling his red wine. The dark liquid quickly spread across the white tablecloth and onto my dress. "Oh no!" Ashley exclaimed, unsuccessfully dabbing at the stain with a dry napkin, making it worse rather than better. "What a shame about your dress, Melissa. You should go try to get it cleaned." The insincerity in her voice was unmistakable. It wasn't concern, it was schadenfreude. I excused myself to the restroom again, this time spending several minutes trying to salvage my dress. Dabbing the wine stain with cold water, I stared at my reflection. My eyes had a wounded look I hadn't seen since my time in foster care, the look of someone desperately trying to belong where they weren't wanted. For 15 years, I believed I was Carter. I believed in the adoption papers, the family photos, and the I love yous exchanged at holidays. I believed I was home. Standing in that elegant restaurant bathroom, I suddenly wasn't sure what to believe. This is about Mom and Dad, I firmly reminded myself. Their anniversary deserves to be celebrated regardless of what game Ashley is playing. With new determination, I dried my hands and squared my shoulders. I would get through this dinner with dignity and grace. I refused to let Ashley's behavior ruin this important milestone for the people who gave me a home when I had none. I just never imagined how much worse the evening would get. When I returned to the table, I found that the seating had been rearranged again. My chair had been moved to the very corner of the table, partially behind a decorative column. The intimate round arrangement I had specifically requested when making the reservation had been changed to a rectangular configuration with my parents at the head, surrounded by Ashley and her husband, and I had been pushed to what felt like an afterthought. "We needed more space," Ashley explained with a shrug when she noticed my confusion. "It's better for everyone." I silently took my new seat, now finding it difficult to even see some family members without leaning awkwardly around the pillar. The waiter came with the main courses and had to stretch awkwardly to place my plate in its awkward position. When everyone began to eat, Ashley stood up, tapping her spoon on her glass. The crystal bell silenced the conversation as all eyes turned to her. "I would like to make a toast to the most amazing parents anyone could ask for," she began, her voice echoing throughout the restaurant. "Dad, Mom, 35 years of marriage is an incredible achievement. You have shown me what true love looks like, what family really means." She raised her glass higher. "The Carter family has a proud heritage that stretches back generations. We come from a line of strong, devoted people who understand that blood is thicker than water." Her eyes flicked briefly to me before she continued, "Who understand that family isn't just a word. It's a bond that connects us through our shared DNA, through the traits we pass on, through the history that flows through our veins." Several relatives nodded approvingly, seemingly oblivious to the deliberate nature of her words. My parents smiled at their biological daughter, their expressions warm with pride. "To Robert and Carol Carter," Ashley concluded, "thank you for the legacy you have created, for a family line that will continue through the generations." Everyone raised their glasses in unison. "To Robert and Carol." I raised my glass too, then gathered the courage to add to the toast. "I'd also like to say—" "Oh, and one more thing," Ashley interrupted me, not even acknowledging that I had started to speak. "Trent and I have been waiting for the perfect moment to share our news." She paused dramatically, building anticipation. "We're expecting a baby. Mom, Dad, you're going to be grandparents this winter." The table erupted in excited shouts and congratulations. My mother burst into tears of joy, while my father stood up to hug Ashley and shake Trent's hand vigorously. In the commotion, no one remembered what I was going to say. When the excitement subsided, conversations began around the table, all focused on Ashley's pregnancy. How far along was she? Did they want a boy or a girl? Had they thought about names? "We're thinking Robert for a boy, after Dad, of course," Ashley announced, "and Carol for a girl to honor Mom. Keeping these family names alive is so important to us." My cousin Brandon raised his glass again. "To the next generation of true Carters." I sat silently, the untouched food on my plate growing cold. 15 years of believing that I belonged had been systematically dismantled over the course of one dinner. Every comment, every toast, every story shared seemed designed to emphasize one clear message. I was not, and never would be, a true member of this family. Then came the moment that forever changed my relationship with the Carters. Ashley, still glowing with excitement from her pregnancy announcement, looked directly at me across the table. With every relative watching, she said loudly, "Melissa, why don't you find another table? This one is for family, not foster girls." The restaurant seemed to fall silent around us. Conversations at neighboring tables stopped as patrons turned to watch the awkward scene unfold. Ashley continued, her voice ringing clearly in the sudden silence. "I mean, it's great that Mom and Dad took you in when you needed somewhere to go, but this is a celebration of our family line, our heritage, our blood. You don't really fit into that narrative, do you?" I stared at her in shock, unable to comprehend that she had actually said those words out loud, publicly, at our parents' anniversary. I turned to Robert and Carol, waiting for them to object, to defend me, to remind everyone that I was their daughter too. But they didn't. My father studied his plate intently, suddenly very interested in cutting a piece of steak. My mother fiddled with her napkin, her eyes downcast. Neither of them said anything. Aunt Dorothy laughed awkwardly. "Ashley always speaks her mind, doesn't she?" Uncle James nodded. The Carters have never been ones to sugarcoat things. Straightforward, all of them. Cousin Michelle looked uncomfortable, but remained silent. Trent smiled slightly, his hand resting on Ashley's shoulder in obvious support. Only young Olivia, 19, the youngest cousin present, showed any sign of distress at what was happening, her eyes wide with alarm. Inside, I was falling apart. 15 years of security, belonging, family identity, all turned out to be an illusion in one devastating moment. The pain was physical, a heavy weight on my chest that made it difficult to breathe. My hands trembled under the table, and I pressed them against my thighs to stabilize them. But on the outside, I remained calm. Years in the foster care system had taught me to mask my pain, to never let others see my vulnerability. I wouldn't give Ashley the satisfaction of seeing me break. "I understand," I said quietly, my voice somehow remaining steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "Thank you for clarifying where I stand." I felt every eye in the restaurant on me, the other patrons, the wait staff, all witnesses to my public rejection. Some looked away in secondary embarrassment. Others watched with the morbid fascination of onlookers passing a car accident. At that moment, memories flashed through my mind. Carol teaching me how to bake her famous apple pie, Robert helping me move into the college dorm, family Christmases where stockings hung for each of us, my name embroidered just like Ashley's, the day they officially adopted me, telling me I would always have a home with them. "You're a Carter now," Robert promised. Was it always a lie? The waiter approached our table, his expression professionally neutral despite witnessing the awkward scene. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, looking around uncertainly. "Everything's fine," Ashley replied before anyone else could speak. "We're celebrating my parents' anniversary and my pregnancy announcement." The waiter nodded, clearly eager to escape the tension. As he turned to leave, I made my decision. "Actually," I said, my voice growing stronger, "I'd like the check, please." "Dad will take care of it later," Ashley interjected. "No," I said firmly. "I'd like the full bill for the whole party now, please." The waiter looked confusedly between us. "It's all on me tonight," I explained, making eye contact with him. "For the whole table. Every person, every dish, every drink." He nodded understandingly and stepped back to prepare the bill. The family continued their conversations as if nothing unusual had happened, as if I had not just been publicly expelled from their ranks. Ashley began telling stories about her pregnancy symptoms, keeping the attention firmly on herself. My parents, who had raised me for 15 years, who had promised me a home forever, said nothing in my defense. They just carried on, laughing at Ashley's jokes, discussing baby names, pretending I wasn't sitting there with my world crumbling around me. I sat perfectly still, my back straight, my expression neutral, even as I felt something inside me break irrevocably. The identity I had built as Melissa Carter was stripped away in front of an audience, and the people who were supposed to protect me participated in my humiliation. The waiter returned with a leather folder, discreetly placing it in front of me. Inside was a bill for 15 people, including several dishes and expensive wines that Ashley had ordered throughout the evening. The total, $2,130. I looked at the number without flinching, even though it represented a significant amount even with my recent raise. Without hesitation, I took out my credit card and placed it in the folder, signing the receipt with a steady hand when the waiter returned. As I took my last sip of water, I hadn't touched the wine all evening. I accepted that this moment marked the end of one chapter of my life and the beginning of another. The fantasy of being Carter was over. It was time to face reality. But reality had another surprise in store for me. "One moment, please," a familiar voice said behind my chair. I turned to see Sofia Rodriguez standing next to the waiter, her presence immediately drawing the attention of everyone at the table. At 45, Sofia exuded confidence and authority in her custom-made suit, her dark hair pulled back into an elegant updo. "Melissa, I thought it was you," she said warmly, placing her hand on my shoulder. "I was in the office reviewing the quarterly figures when Marco told me you were here." My family watched in confusion as Sofia, clearly someone important at the restaurant, greeted me with such familiarity. "Everyone, this is Sofia Rodriguez," I explained, finding my voice again. "She owns Montgomery's." "And 4 other restaurants in Denver," Sofia added with a smile, although I couldn't have done it without the financial expertise of my business partner. She squeezed my shoulder gently. Ashley's smug expression faltered. "Business partner? Melissa didn't tell you?" Sofia looked surprised. She's been my financial advisor for years, but during the pandemic, when restaurants were struggling, Melissa approached me with an investment opportunity. Now she owns 30% of Rodriguez Hospitality Group. The shock at the table was palpable. My mother's mouth actually opened, while my father sat up straight in his chair, suddenly paying attention. That last injection of capital allowed us not only to survive the pandemic, but to expand, Sofia continued, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "The new location in Boulder is exceeding all projections, and the opening in Santa Fe next month is already fully booked for the first 3 weeks. Ashley's face drained of color. "Melissa owns this restaurant?" "And the other 4, Sofia corrected cheerfully, although she's too modest to usually talk about it. Melissa prefers to focus on helping her clients build their own success. My parents exchanged glances, finally breaking the silence. "Melissa, you never told us about this investment," my mother said, her voice carrying a hint of offense that felt completely hypocritical after her previous silence. "What exactly is going on here?" my father asked, looking between Sofia and me with newfound interest. Before I could answer, Sofia continued. "Melissa saved this restaurant, Mr. Carter. When banks refused to lend to the hospitality industry, she structured private equity financing that kept all 173 of my employees on the payroll during the closures. Not one person lost their health insurance during the worst health crisis of our lives." As if on cue, several members of the staff approached our table. Marco, the head chef, nodded respectfully to me. "Miss Carter, it's good to see you again. And the investment in new kitchen equipment has revolutionized our efficiency." The sommelier was next. "Miss Carter, I wanted to thank you for approving the expansion of our wine program. The collectible series has been extremely successful." One by one, key members of staff approached to greet me, each expressing gratitude for specific improvements I had helped implement. All the while, my family, the people who just minutes ago had rejected me as not truly one of them, watched in stunned silence. Ashley's previous confidence had completely evaporated, replaced by visible discomfort as the power dynamic shifted dramatically. Trent looked between his wife and me, clearly re-evaluating his assessment of his sister-in-law. I stood up, finding strength in the respect these hard-working professionals showed me, respect earned by my actions, not by accident of birth. "Sofia, thank you for coming to say hello. I just paid the bill for my parents' anniversary dinner." Sophia glanced at the leather folder on the table, then back at me with understanding in her eyes. She had known me long enough to read between the lines of the situation. "Absolutely not," she said firmly, picking up the folder. "The owners of Rodriguez Hospitality Group do not pay for food at their own establishments. This dinner is on the house to celebrate your parents' anniversary." She tore the receipt in half with a flourish, handing the pieces to the waiter. "Marco has prepared a special dessert for the occasion. Please enjoy the rest of your evening." As the staff dispersed to their duties, I remained standing, finally ready to address the family that had just rejected me. "For 15 years, I began, my voice quiet but clear. "I tried to earn my place at this table. I sought your approval, your acceptance, your love. I believed that if I was successful enough, good enough, generous enough, you would eventually see me as a true Carter." I looked at each person in turn, ending with my parents. Tonight has shown me that no achievement, no contribution, no amount of love on my part will ever be enough to overcome the fact that we don't share DNA. Ashley shifted uncomfortably in her seat, no longer looking triumphant. "I want to thank you all for this clarity," I continued. "It's painful but necessary. Now I understand that I was trying to belong to a place where full belonging was never possible." My father finally found his voice. "Melissa, you're exaggerating. Of course you're part of the family." "Really?" I asked simply. "When Ashley said I should find another table because I'm not family, none of you objected, including you, Dad, including you, Mom." They had no answer to that simple truth. "Congratulations on 35 years of marriage," I said to my parents. "And congratulations on the pregnancy, Ashley. I wish you all the best." I turned to Sophia, who remained standing by my side. "I think I'll find another table now." As I started to walk away, Trent suddenly spoke up. "Melissa, wait. Your connections in the restaurant industry could be really valuable to our family. Perhaps we should discuss the possibility of working together." The transparent attempt to now capitalize on my success after participating in my humiliation was so grotesque that I didn't even deem it worthy of a direct response. "Ownership has its privileges," I said instead. "For example, I can make sure that Trent Anderson will never be able to book a table at any Rodriguez hospitality establishment again." Sophia nodded sharply. "I'll update our system immediately." When the implications of this sank in, that Trent would be blacklisted from Denver's 5 most prestigious restaurants, several family members began to reconsider their positions. "Melissa, dear, you know Ashley sometimes speaks without thinking," Aunt Dorothy offered weakly. "And we think of you as family," Uncle James added, "in our own way." But it was too late for such empty assurances. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. The family that had never truly accepted me was now trying to maintain ties with the successful businesswoman they had rejected as an outsider. At that moment, standing tall while they sat in awkward silence, I felt a profound shift within myself. The desperate need to belong, to be accepted by these people, began to dissolve. In its place came something unexpected: freedom. "I appreciate the sudden interest in my business success," I said evenly, "but I'm afraid relationships don't work that way. They're not transactional. They're not based on what someone can do for you when it's convenient." My words fell heavily into the silence that descended on our section of the restaurant. Even the neighboring tables fell silent, the diners pretending not to be listening, though they were clearly catching every word. "Melissa," my mother began, her voice trembling slightly, "we love you. You know that." I looked at her, this woman who had combed my hair when I had the flu my first year with them, who had helped me pick out my prom dress, who had sat silently while her biological daughter told me I didn't belong. "I believe you love me in your own way," I replied softly, "but love without respect, without protection, without true inclusion. It's not enough. Not anymore." Sophia touched my elbow gently. "Melissa, there are people at the bar who have been waiting to surprise you. Would you like to join them instead?" I glanced toward the bar area and saw several familiar faces pretending not to watch the drama unfolding. My assistant Jessica was there with my colleagues Daniel and Sarah from Stevenson and Mitchell. My best friend Rachel, who had known me since college, waved discreetly. "You threw a surprise party?" I asked Sophia. "Of course," she replied. "We've been planning this for weeks. Your work family wanted to celebrate your promotion properly." The contrast couldn't have been more striking between the people who had gathered specifically to celebrate my achievement and the family who couldn't even acknowledge it. "I'd love to join them," I said, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders with every step away from the Carter's table. As I turned to leave, I noticed the financial advisor pushing a folder across his red desk. These investment options would create sustainable funding for the scholarship program while preserving the principal, he explained. I study the numbers, no longer intimidated by the financial jargon. 1 week since the hearing, and the world already feels different. "The pediatric hematology scholarship must be fully funded," I say, tapping the proposal. "This is non-negotiable." The advisor nods, taking notes. "And the restraining order stands firm. They can't come within 300 meters. My voice no longer wavers when I mention my family. It's strange how quickly family has become an administrative term rather than an emotional one. The local newspaper ran a front-page story yesterday. "Mother vindicated in battle for trust." I've received dozens of supportive calls and messages. Even Emily's fiancé called to apologize before announcing that their engagement was off. My parents are facing possible perjury charges. And Rachel was fired after her recorded testimony was circulated around her workplace. When I leave the counselor's office, Margaret is waiting in her old Buick, the window rolled down despite the autumn chill. "Are you ready?" she asks. I get into the passenger seat, remembering all those trips to and from the hospital with Jason. How Margaret brought thermoses of homemade soup when the cafeteria food became unbearable. How she sat with him while I showered or napped. I never thought I could do it, I admit as we drive. Stand up to them. Create something lasting. Margaret pats my hand. "I knew from the moment you put that figurine in his grave and made your promise." That night, I sleep peacefully for the first time since Jason's diagnosis. No nightmares about hospital corridors or the sounds of equipment. Instead, I dream of Jason, laughing, whole and strong, running through sunny fields. David calls the next morning. "The foundation papers are filed. The trust is locked tight. Even the Supreme Court couldn't touch it now." My neighbors organize food deliveries. Every evening, someone shows up at my door with casseroles, soups, fresh bread. Small acts of kindness that would have previously overwhelmed me with gratitude now feel like confirmation of something I am slowly beginning to understand. Family is not always blood. I take out a photo of Jason, not a hospital photo, but one from before his illness, on the beach, his smile wide under his baseball cap. For the first time, I can look at it without dissolving into tears. "Now I know what to do with your legacy, my friend," I whisper. 6 months later, I am standing in the pediatric blood disease ward where Jason spent so many hours. The walls are brighter now, painted with underwater scenes that Jason would have loved. A sign by the nurses' station reads, "Jason Robinson Memorial Wing." A young nurse approaches, extending her hand. "I'm Jennifer Adams, the first Jason Robinson Fellow. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity to specialize in pediatric hematology." Jason would be thrilled, I say, realizing that I'm smiling as I talk about him, not the tense, painful smile of someone holding back tears, but a genuine expression of joy at his memory. He wanted to be a doctor himself someday. "The foundation makes such a difference," says Jennifer. 3 families have already received emergency housing assistance. The Jason Legacy Foundation now supports families facing the same battles we did, covering expenses that insurance doesn't cover, providing emergency housing near hospitals, funding specialized training for pediatric nurses. Each board meeting brings new opportunities to expand our reach. Margaret serves as volunteer coordinator, organizing a network of people who provide food, transportation, and childcare for families with hospitalized children. David handles all legal matters pro bono, ensuring the foundation's stability. "You've created something beautiful out of something tragic," Michael's mother tells me during her monthly visit. She and her husband have become advocates for grandparents, helping other grandparents navigate the medical system when their grandchildren are sick. I find myself speaking at support groups, mentoring parents who are new to the terrifying world of chronic childhood illness. "The first step is to believe you can do it," I tell them. "The second is to know you don't have to do it alone." My voice no longer trembles when I speak in public. My hands no longer shake when I sign documents. The woman who stood frozen at her son's grave has become someone else, someone stronger, someone Jason would be proud of. A year to the day after Jason's funeral, I return to the cemetery. The path feels different under my feet, no longer a march to unbearable grief, but a purposeful visit to a place of connection. I place fresh flowers on his grave, tracing the letters of his name with my finger. The morning sun warms the granite. "Excuse me," a voice calls out. A woman approaches with a little girl of about 7 holding her hand. "Are you Jessica Robinson?" I nod, standing up to greet them. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. This is my daughter, Emma." The woman's eyes shine with unshed tears. "Emma was diagnosed with the same condition as your son last year. A specialist funded by your scholarship program found a treatment protocol that worked when nothing else did. Your son's legacy saved my daughter's life." Emma steps forward, shy but determined. "Thank you for helping me get better." I kneel down to her level, seeing in her face the future Jason never had. "You're welcome, Emma." Standing up again, I share Jason's story, not with pain but with pride. "Fighting for his legacy transformed me," I explain. "I found strength I never knew I had." Sarah listens intently. "Is the foundation expanding?" "Yes. We're funding research into rare blood disorders starting next quarter. Margaret is officially joining the board, and David is structuring the research grants. Michael's parents are leading the grandparents' advocacy program." As they leave, I reach into my pocket and pull out Jason's favorite figurine, the one I placed on his grave a year ago. The cemetery worker retrieved it for me after the service, understanding my immediate regret at parting with it. I gently place it near his headstone. "I kept my promise, Jason. Your legacy is safe and growing stronger every day." Standing in the same place where I once felt completely abandoned, I am surrounded by the presence of those who have become my true family, not bound by blood, but by something stronger: choice, loyalty, and love. "The family that matters isn't always the one you're born into," I whisper to Jason. "It's the one that stands by you when you need it most." As I walk back to the car, the morning sun warm on my face, I realize something profound. Sometimes the deepest betrayal leads to the most powerful transformation. I'm not just surviving right now, I'm thriving.